Hi, I'm Lillian. Welcome back to my channel, Ink and Pages. Today I'm going to be telling you about the 3 final books I read in 2023 and also showing you the last 5 books I got right at the end of the year. So in October, I finished exactly 1 book, and it was I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a memoir about her childhood and her relationship with her mum, who she only realised as an adult after her mum died was actually very abusive towards her. And so it's kind of anecdotes and reminiscences from her childhood and some of her teenage years and young adulthood as well, about her relationship with her mum. And it was very shocking and interesting and emotional. And even though I didn't have a highly emotional response to it, I didn't love it in the way that other people did, I can still absolutely see why it is so popular and it's so talked about, and I would still highly recommend it. The anecdote that got me quite early into the book and made me realize exactly what sort of thing I was in for, is this story about how when Jeanette was very young, her mum had cancer, and they did this home video of when she was very ill. I think in the midst of chemo, and I think it's her at home with the family around her, and they had this home video of just a random moment. And then years later, when she was in remission, they would get together. She would make them get together, the mum, as a family every week and sit down and watch this video together. And she would, harp on about, how ill she was and why couldn't anyone tell she was dying of cancer, and why were they all acting so disrespectfully and childish around her. And I'm like, these are literal children. And she would tell the same stories and admonish the kids in exactly the same way every week for years, in this same weird little tradition and almost ceremony of they would all get together and watch this home video. And she says to Jeanette, I can't believe at this moment in the video you would come in when you can see I'm so ill and so tired, and you would start singing I think Jingle Bells so loudly, it was so grating and annoying, something like that. And then Jeanette's like, I was too. A literal toddler came in and was singing Jingle Bells. And it was that story where I was like, oh, okay, I see how, crazy and abusive this woman is. I think the reason I didn't love this as much as other people was just the technical side of things. For example, the chapters are quite short, and that works in that they're sort of snappy anecdotes that really pull you in, and it's very compelling, and it's very interesting to read, and it was hard to put down as I was reading it. But I felt that worked better for the early parts of the book where it's all about her childhood. I think I found those bits the most interesting. And then once it got to when the author was older, it felt like time was moving very quickly, and you'd turn to the next chapter and you'd be years ahead, and it felt like something had been skipped over. And I didn't love that, but I mean, that's a very small gripe. And the actual content and the heart of this book was a really excellent read, and it's told very well. I think she's a very good author, and so yeah, I would really highly recommend this one. In November, I also finished exactly 1 book. I forced myself to, as a point of pride, and it was the 3rd volume of the Monstress graphic novel series by Marge Liu and Sana Takeda. I love this series. I reread it every year in preparation for the new volume coming out, except, it's a while. I've only finished up to volume 3 this year. And this one, it was still very good. It's still very strong. It's just not as good as the first one in the series, because the first volume in this series, I think is maybe one of the most perfect series openers I've ever read. It is an absolute 5-star read for me. I love what it does as a kind of contained volume, but also how it sets up the rest of the series. So in this one, we are in a new location. We're in a new seaside city, which I thought was cool. And as usual, I really love the artwork and the characters and how complex the world building is. It's just really something I can sink my teeth into, and I love that kind of thing. The negatives are there is a side character called Kipper who is so irritating. She's so irritating. She drives me up the wall, and I think she gets more annoying later in the series, I remember. But in this one, you know, she's starting to grate on my nerves, and I didn't love that. And the other thing, although I appreciate how rich and complex the story and the world building is, we are still in this volume at the point in the series where there are like more and more questions being posed and more mysteries being introduced to the plot than, you know, answers and solutions we're getting. So, you know, I have faith in the authors, and I know that every single mystery they put down will be picked up, and every plot thread that you think, hey, what's going on with that? They will come back around to it. I have absolute faith in them as storytellers. But in volume 3 in the series, we're not quite there yet. I know it's coming, but not in this volume. So I think I gave this, upon reread, a 3.5 star, but I'm so excited to continue the series. It's my favorite graphic novel series of all time, and honestly one of my favorite series of all time. And even though it's not a bad rating, even though I'm only giving this a 3.5 star, I will not hear a word against this series. I absolutely love it, and I will defend it to my dying breath. And then in December, I also only finished one book, and it was a reread to finish off the year. It was Touch by Claire North. I first read this in 2000 and I want to say 16? 17? I think it was 2016. It was when I was on my year abroad, and I was very miserable and needed something to distract me, and I read this and it was an absolute favourite. I'd previously read the first 15 Lives of Harry August by this author, and I was very excited to read this one, and I loved it just as much. Well, not quite as much, but I loved it almost as much because I love Harry August the most. And this year actually I reread the first 15 Lives of Harry August over the summer, and it was so fun to reread this one as well because it is just so excellent. And again, I said this with Harry August, but I was worried that I was almost like misremembering how much I loved the book, and that a reread would reveal that I had imagined how good it was or imagined how much I enjoyed it. But no, I was right. This book holds up. It's incredible. This is a sci-fi book, I would say, but it's also a sci-fi thriller. It's mostly sci-fi. If you had to pick a category, it's sci-fi, but it is a sci-fi thriller at heart, I would say. And it is about this person called Kepler who is, they call themselves a ghost, in that they don't really have, you know, physical form. They are basically just a consciousness, and they can transfer from body to body through, you know, physical touch, like skin to skin contact, basically. And when they are in a body, it's kind of like that person blacks out, and the last thing they remember is, you know, like someone about to shake their hand, and that person is, you know, Kepler. And then the next thing they know, they're, you know, shaking hands, for example, or like punch someone in the face, I don't know, making contact with another person, and then, you know, Kepler's gone into that body. And it is so interesting, and it opens with a murder. It opens with Kepler, someone's trying to kill Kepler, and they end up killing the body Kepler was in, the body Kepler was wearing a moment ago. And Kepler is like, what the fuck, basically, like, how dare you kill, you know, my friend, the body that I was wearing, basically, and starts to investigate, I guess. That makes it sound much simpler than it is. It's actually, it's very interesting, and I love how when Claire North has an idea like this, she doesn't just, you know, have an idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if there was this person who was only a consciousness and they transferred from skin to skin? That's pretty cool. But then she will take it like 15 steps further and think about all the logical progression of that, and what it actually would be like for people who have somehow, this is their existence, and what does that mean, and how do they interact with the world, and how does the world interact with them. And it's so excellent. Like, I absolutely really loved this. And it had been a good amount of time since I first read it that I'd forgotten a lot of what happens, to be honest. Same with Harry August. In this one, I completely forgot you know, most of the plot. I had a few things I remembered and like key scenes, but as I was reading it and getting towards the end, I realized I'd completely forgotten, you know, like the final climax of the story, the showdown, I guess, everything that happened at the end, I'd completely forgotten about. And so it really was like I was reading it for the first time and having as good a time as I did the first time I read it. And I cried at the end. I didn't remember this being so emotional, but I shed several tears in the last 15, 20 pages. Like, it was so excellent. I'm not giving it a 5-star the second time around, but like, it's close. It's a very, very close 4.5. And I'm very glad I decided to reread it. It took months. I started reading this in October, and I was kind of, even though I was enjoying it so much and could tell it was objectively a great book I was really loving, I was having to force myself to read like 10 pages, 20 pages every few days or so. And I'm so glad I did, and I'm so glad this is the book I finished off the year with, because it was so good. So I will now show you the most recent few additions to my bookshelves. First of all are 2 books I got in the Waterstones at Piccadilly. I think before this year, I'd been to that Waterstones once. Honestly, I think I'd been there once. And everyone's like, oh, it's the biggest bookshop in Europe, but only if you measure it by shelf space. And someone else is like, no, it's the biggest bookshop in Europe if you measure it by number of books. Or there's some weird metric, which implies that, you know, it's slightly exaggerated. If you have to invent a weird metric in order to claim a record, is it really a record? Anyway, I went there somewhat randomly. Why did I go there? I was meeting a friend for dinner and I was really early, so I went there. And I love it. Oh my goodness, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good bookshop. I will give it that. However, I was aimlessly wandering around and I didn't know what to look for. I was kind of just expecting to waste half an hour in there. I didn't actually expect to walk out with 2 books, but I did. So first of all, I got The Celts, Search for a Civilization by Alice Roberts. I got this in the, I want to say the 4th floor in the history section. I like mythology and folklore, and I was like, oh, Celts, okay. And I read the introduction and I was like, okay, interesting. And then I bought it, and I am about halfway through. Hilariously, it's not at all what I thought it was about. I thought it was just going to be a book about the Celts. It's not. Check out the subtitle. I should have paid more attention to. It's actually more about how we know what we know about the Celts. So it's actually a lot of archaeology and a lot of talking about specific like hordes of gold and bronze and weapons and jewellery and things that have been found across Europe, and how we can extrapolate from them what we know and how they compare to each other. And even though it was not at all what I was expecting or why I bought the book, because I was like, ooh, tell me more about Celts, and actually this is, you know, meta, how we know what we know about Celts, I'm still really enjoying it and I'm still really liking it. However, I haven't picked up in about 6 to 8 weeks, but I'm liking it. It's good, it's very interesting. And the second book I walked out of the Piccadilly Waterstones with was The Chinese Myths by Tao Tao Liu. This is, again, from my mythology and folklore shelf. I recognise the like kind of edition style because I have a book on Egyptian myths in this same, same series. So like I recognised it and I was like, excellent. I also haven't read the Egyptian myths book yet, but I was like, I don't know anything or own any information about Chinese mythology. And I was like, sweet, yeah, let's do it. I've got a voucher, let's get it. It's got some pictures in. Oh look, I opened it on a page with a picture. It's got some pictures in. There's another picture, and I think when I eventually flick through it in maybe several years, I will enjoy myself. Next is a book that I totally forgot I bought until I saw it on my shelf just before filming and was like, oh shit, better include that. I didn't even have it in my bullet journal in like my new books spread. I didn't have it on my reading spreadsheet as part of my TBR. I bought it, put it on my shelf, and immediately forgot that I bought it. And it is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I bought this on a whim in Sainsbury's because it was £5. And I was like, haven't I heard about that book? I think I have. And yes, this is about a 10-year university reunion, and I think someone was murdered while the characters were at university and someone went to prison for it, but now 10 years later, presumably, you know, it turns out that person didn't actually do it and the real killer is running among us still. It's something like that. I think it's going to be like a mix of a dark academia and a thriller, and if it is, I think I could enjoy that. And yeah, it was basically just a £5 impulse purchase, and I sort of immediately regretted it. Even though I'm interested in reading it, I did sort of immediately regret it. And maybe that's why I wiped it from my memory, because I was like, I'm just going around buying books for no reason, Lillian, even though I like to do that. And the reason is I like books. But yeah, totally forgot about that, but I'm actually quite excited to get to it. Okay, next I want to give a shout out to a book I have previously hauled, but in that haul I couldn't find it because I'd lost it somewhere, and it is The Iliad by Homer. As I said in that haul, I bought it in a train station office where they had a shelf of books, and it was like, buy a book, leave £1 for charity. And I was about to go hiking with my dad, and I was like, actually, I would quite like this copy of the Iliad. And so I bought it and immediately lost it when I got home, except it turns out it was in my hiking rucksack the entire time. There are so many pockets in that thing that it was on an inside pocket. But normally when you open a bag, you have like the inside pocket at the back. There was also an inside pocket at the front. And so I had actually been carrying this with me in my hiking rucksack for like 3 more hikes. I probably went 20 to 30 miles with this thing on my person and had no idea. So even though I've actually had this for months, and I talked about this in my last haul, I'm mentioning it again now because I found this in October or November, I think, and was sort of giddy and euphoric with how ridiculous it was that I'd been carrying this around for months and hadn't realised. And I made my dad take this picture of me to commemorate the occasion because it was absolutely ridiculous. And so I will finish this haul with the 2 books I got for Christmas last year. First of all is Across the Greengrass Fields by Shauna Maguire. This is the 6th book in the Wayward Children series. I seem to be enjoying the even numbered books more than the odd numbers. This is book 6, so an even number. I think I'm gonna like it. I actually don't really know what this is about. I think it's about like someone who's really into horses and centaurs. I think that's it. After embracing her time with the herd, it says, about a girl called Reagan, I think. So yeah, I don't know much about this, other than I think it's gonna be good. And finally, to feed my Lord of the Rings addiction and interest, I got this gorgeous copy of The Silmarillion. Hilariously, I previously owned a copy of The Silmarillion and I got rid of it in, I think, 2020 because I was like, I'm never gonna read this. And to be fair, the edition I had like wasn't that nice, and you know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. However, that one wasn't very nice, and this has a gorgeous cover. But back then I just wasn't in the throes of my Lord of the Rings addiction as I currently am. It has a tight grasp on me, and I was like, I would quite like actually my own copy of The Silmarillion, because I am very into it, and I'm very into Lord of the Rings and world building. And this has a map at the back. Does it? Where's the map? Wait, where's the map? There is a map somewhere. Wait, oh my goodness, I'm imagining things. Where's the map? Am I being dumb? Oh, hang on, here's the map. Here's the map. I found it. Ah, nice. Okay, I'm not imagining things. Apparently, when they got this, I think my brother gave me this for Christmas. Apparently they had to buy it twice because the first one there was like a manufacturing issue with the map, and like it wouldn't unfold properly, so they had to go back and return it and get me another one. And I'm very glad you did. Thank you. I love it. I listen to the audiobook of The Lord of the Rings to fall asleep every night, so I know the opening chapter to the introduction of Fellowship of the Ring pretty much off by heart by now, and I'm very, very excited to add this to my shelf. Also, shout out to the YouTube channel Nerd of the Rings, because I love Lord of the Rings and I always have. However, my current love, this chapter of my love for Lord of the Rings, was ignited by watching some of those videos on YouTube. I think specifically the one on Shelob and Ungoliant, who are like the big scary spider monsters of the Lord of the Rings stories. and I've been subscribed to that channel since before it was very popular. Get me. And so yes, I love Lord of the Rings and I'm very pleased to have this now. So here we have my most recent reads and recent additions to my TBR. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.